he was nice. I was always a very inquiring mind. I always wanted to know a lot of things. And he was just very hard-working. But I can remember when I was 9 years old, that was right before World War II, and there was a lot of talk in the air about we may have to go to war because Hitler was starting to become known as a big problem. And I could hear all this talk, but that hadn't happened yet. And I can remember asking him, what is war like? What happens? And he told me, and I said, are there any wars going on at present? He said, yes, there's a civil war going on in Spain. Now, that was back in the 30s, I guess. And then the war came. So I used to ask him a lot of questions, and even though he hadn't had much schooling, he knew a lot. He read the paper and kept up with the news, very much so. And but he was so very hard-working that, you know, he wasn't around as much as my mother was because he worked very, very hard. He had a real sense of work ethic that what you do is work hard, hard, hard. And he did all his life, whatever he did. Well, he was married to a much older woman. I mean, when they were married, he was 22 and she was 30. She was 8 years older. Yeah. So, so actually when she died, she was 51, he was 8 years younger than that, so he was still quite a young man. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she had liver and pancreas cancer. Yeah. I was 17 when she died. But right before that, we had the Monterey experience, so I'll give you a little article that I wrote about that. There was a point in the war where the Japanese were coming very, very close to Sydney. They were coming down. They had already bombed a lot of the north of Australia, and they were coming down, and Sydney Harbour was very vulnerable because it had a lot of ships, American, English, all kinds of ships. Even the Queen Mary was there, but it was all in camouflage, and it was a war troop carrier, you know. It converted to over the war. So these little Japanese submarines, tiny little things, 2 men only could fit in them, and they got into the harbour and they did some damage around the harbour. They bombed they shelled buildings and broke them, and they sunk some ships when they got them. And what happened was the land around the harbour is the most prime real estate. I mean, you'd have to be millionaire to just about to live there now. But it was even then only the wealthy lived around there because it's beautiful. Just beautiful looking over Sydney Harbour. Those people all cleared out. They were scared. And there was all that real estate open and empty. And there was this beautiful big old hotel. It would have been built around the turn of the 20th century or maybe in the late part of the 19th century. Beautiful thing. I've got photos of it and I'll show you an article. And he went in and he rented this place for a song, and we moved into it, and he fixed it up and made it into little small apartments and studios. And as people started coming back after it looked like the tide had turned of the war, because the Americans were starting to win by then, people started coming back, and he sublet all these little rooms and made enough to not only pay the overhead rent but to make a nice little income for my mother, which she did, and then he went on with his own job. And that was a beautiful place. I mean, it's now on the Register of Historic Places. Yeah.
So, go back to the war. America, they just said, started winning because one of the most gruesome acts in humankind is throwing bombs.
No, that wasn't until later. No, they had made significant progress long before. That was the very end. That was the end of the war. The war would probably not have ended when it did if that hadn't happened.
It was in school that we were starting to lose, and that's why they did it.
We weren't losing. No. But it would have dragged on a lot longer. Yeah.
How did people feel about it back then? Now looking back.
We had no idea. I can remember I was in high school at the time. I was 14. I turned 15 a few days before they dropped the bomb. And I remember them teaching us in science class that the atom was the smallest particle that cannot be split into anything. And, it cannot be divided, cannot be split. Well, we soon learned it could be split, but not only into that, into much littler things.
Textbooks away.
Yeah, it was the smallest thing of matter, we thought. We didn't know that there was anything smaller than an atom.
They didn't know about the electrons and protons.
No idea.
They didn't know that.
They may have known a bit about that, but very, very primitive. And as far as things like quarks and other little things, of course, no idea.